I haven't gotten a single page of the documents that I asked for, and it's hysterical because the pension fund has rebutted publicly and said, "But we gave him 20,000 pages of documents." I said, "Yeah, but they weren't the documents I asked for. You don't measure transparency by pages. You measure transparency with, did you give me what I requested?" And the answer to that was no.
This episode is brought to you by Bird, a Binance Incubator Labs participant. Bird is on the cusp of releasing their most anticipated product yet. Showcased at the Binance Labs Demo Day, it's called the Customized Investor Launchpad Score. Bird harnesses the power of predictive analytics to push the Web3 user experience to new heights. Visit bird.money to learn more about machine learning and ethically mined user data via decentralized oracles and APIs. Link in the description below. If you want to see more videos and interviews like this from influential people in tech, finance, and sports, subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit the bell to be alerted. And go a step further and join the YouTube and membership area for early releases of videos like this. I'm out of here. It's your boy Crypto Blood, and welcome to another Kicking It session. I've got a returning guest. He's been on quite a number of times. I love having him on and getting updates on the pension crisis we have here in the United States and all around the globe, really, but he focuses here in the United States. Specifically, we're going to talk about the Ohio State teachers' pension crisis, covering that. They hired him to oversee and try to help them get that a lot of that money that was stolen from Wall Street back. So we're going to talk to Ted today. Great to have you back on, man. It's been a while. We've got a lot to talk about. I think one thing that's really relevant right now is what's going on with Russia and the geopolitical situation with Ukraine and Russia, and it's pretty ironic how that ties into what you do. So before we get started, I gotta ask you this. I'm Crypto Blood. Have you bought any Bitcoin yet?
Not yet.
Oh my God.
Still don't have any yet.
Why not, Ted? What is going on here?
Well, the main thing is I got big gains from 2020.
Okay. In the stock market?
So I'm not selling anything.
Well, it's not gains unless you. It doesn't exist unless you realize them, Ted.
Well, that's the point. That I don't want to pay taxes, so I haven't sold. I have not sold a single stock in 2 years.
Are you planning on to or no?
No,
we got interest rates going up, man. You know, the Federal Reserve, I think this week or next week, they're going to be hiking those rates. That's going to affect stock markets, aren't they?
Well, it could, but like I said, I've got gains from the last few years that are so substantial that the only thing that is certain is if I sell, I'm going to have to pay taxes.
Right.
So I choose to just to stay put. And I have a lot of confidence in the stocks that I own, which are basically Berkshire Hathaway and Amazon and index funds. So I feel pretty confident about all three of those.
Okay, yeah. Berkshire has they're doing a lot over there. Warren Buffett really isn't running it anymore. I think he kind of stepped aside, right? I mean, maybe just publicly, he's the head honcho, but I think he's got some younger people in there making some great decisions, I guess. I don't have any Berkshire, but I'm a crypto millennial, so that's where I'm. That's where I'm putting my cheese. Speaking of cheese, we've got to talk about who stole my pension. Ted is the author of this book alongside the legendary Robert Kiyosaki, who I've had on. If you guys missed that interview, I'll leave a link in the description or in the pop-up of this video, so I want you guys to definitely check that out. But who stole my pension? Was this the first book you ever wrote?
Yes, it was. And Robert, I met Robert a couple of years ago. He flew down to Fort Lauderdale to go on a cruise with hundreds of real estate investors who'd paid to spend some time with him. So the night before the cruise left, he called me and said, "Can you come speak to the group about pensions at the hotel?" So I went down, and he went into the ballroom. He handed me the microphone and said, "Let's answer questions, talk about pensions." And we were surprised that everybody in the room, whether they had a pension or simply taxpayers, had some pretty strong views about pensions. They wanted to hear about state and local pensions. So it went very well, and we said let's do a book together. And one of the things I said to Robert was, I want to do a book. Nobody needs another pension book that no one reads. Because
Right.
pensions are very complicated. We don't want to write a book about pensions that no one's going to read. And we didn't do that. So Who Stole My Pension is in very plain English. And I wrote my portion of the book in 90 days. It was so,
Wow.
flowed right off my tongue. And so I think it's very user friendly. And it also talks about looting of pensions, which is a very sophisticated area of study,
Right.
but it breaks it down and explains it to people what's really going on.
So for those who may not know who you are, Ted, kind of give your a quick background of your professional career and all the things that you've held public and private sector.
Sure. Well, I'm a former SEC attorney. I worked with the Securities and Exchange Commission in Washington, regulating money managers. Then I was the director of compliance and general counsel to one of the largest money managers in the world. And I've done over $1 trillion in forensic investigations of pension plans. And I also, a few years ago, won the largest SEC Whistleblower Award in history, total of $78 million, for my work with the government exposing money management fraud. So I recently completed a forensic investigation of the Ohio Teachers Pension Fund last June. And that's getting a lot of attention now in Ohio and around the country. We just did the Jon Stewart Show 2 days ago, I think.
Yeah, I saw your email go out to everyone on that. I didn't get a chance to check it out. So how did they convey your initiatives and your efforts correctly? I know many times those types of shows can kind of skew things.
No, he did a great job. His staff really understands the stock market and pensions, and they're doing a series of, I think they've done half a dozen shows about what's wrong with the stock market. And basically what Jon Stewart's people feel is that, and I agree, is that there are two stock markets, one for billionaire insiders and then one for the dumb public that gets perpetually screwed when they start investing in stocks and bonds. They're interested. Jon Stewart's people are very interested in this, what's wrong with the stock market, and they've done a number of shows that I think are very well done.
Yeah, that's great. So what we're talking about today, guys, is the update. Again, I've interviewed Ted a number of times in the past. I think the last interview I did, we did really dive deeper into the Ohio Teachers Pension program, or what they have left of it. And it was an interesting story because they reached out to Ted and hired him. They did a GoFundMe type of campaign, raised $75,000 to have him represent. Is that right? Represent them, or
Sure.
or do some discovery work, or what exactly did you do for them initially?
Yeah, the 30,000 school teachers in Ohio got together and raised $75,000 to have me give basically a second opinion. They wanted a national expert who knew more about pensions than the people running their pension to give them a second opinion. There were no preconceived notions. Were they doing a good job, a bad job? So that's what I was brought in to do and was able to do in about 3 or 4 months. We critiqued the job that the people running the pension are doing, and there was a very damning review. First and foremost, because the pension fund refuses to be transparent, refuses to give these teachers in Ohio prospectuses and any of the investment documents where their money is being invested. So, every investor has heard the phrase, read the prospectus before you invest. Great advice.
Right.
But in the case of these school teachers, they're being told they're not allowed to see the prospectuses where their retirements, this is money they're depending on for retirement, where that money is being invested, they're not being allowed to see.
Is that legal? Or did they change the laws to make it legal? Did they move the goalposts?
They moved the goalpost. Yeah, they have made the argument, which I think you'll agree is absurd, that a prospectus that is widely disseminated globally to millions of investors, they said it's a trade secret. And so
well, isn't that the point of a prospectus? I'm
yeah.
supposed to look. I'm supposed to read it, right, and determine
Right.
whether or not I want to invest. Oh, okay, all right.
Well, they're saying that a prospectus is a trade secret, and as a trade secret, it doesn't have to be disclosed to the public. Well, I mean, it's a selling document. It's a it's intended to go out to. You know, so they're saying that if I were to call and ask for the prospectus, the money manager, the Wall Street guy, would give it to me. But if the pension fund invests in these same deals, they claim they don't have to show the teachers what they're invested in. It's a preposterous argument, but that's their argument, and they're sticking with it.
So there was one portion in one of the articles you wrote recently, in I think in Forbes, and this number just blew my mind. I don't know if you uncovered this or someone else, but essentially the state teachers retirement system, STRS, over the last 14 years, it comes out to be about $2.5 million in fees per trading day that they were essentially charged. That is insane. Totaling about $8 billion in wealth siphoned from the pension. Is that correct? Did you discover that, or?
Yes, I discovered that the fees that the pension fund were paying were double what they were claiming easily. And it's basically a wealth transfer. Money, what they did in Ohio was they told the school teachers had been promised a 3% a year annual cost of living adjustment. They told the school teachers, we're going to have to eliminate that 3% that you were promised when you were working. And we're going to pay. But what they didn't say is, they said we're going to have to eliminate that 3% to make the pension more solvent, more sustainable, an austerity measure, if you will. What they didn't say was that they were going to take that 3% that they cut from teachers' benefits and pay Wall Street 4 or 5% more. So it was a straightforward wealth transfer. Take 3% from teachers, pay it to Wall Street. The money didn't stay in the pension. It wasn't savings per se. It funded an extravagant gambling on Wall Street.
Interesting. And so, where are you guys currently in the whole process of trying to get more information? I think in one of your latest Forbes articles, you talked about requesting more information and transparency, and you've gotten absolutely nothing. Is that still the case, or what's the
absolutely? Yeah. I haven't gotten a single page of the documents that I asked for, and it's hysterical because the pension fund has rebutted publicly and said, but we gave him 20,000 pages of documents. I said, yeah, but they weren't the documents I asked for. You don't measure transparency by pages. You measure transparency with, did you give me what I requested? And the answer to that was no. They haven't given me a single page of a single investment document. And what makes this so timely right now is, last June, I wrote that the pension fund was not being transparent at all. They were refusing to disclose documents, and that the pension fund itself had agreed with Wall Street to allow the money managers to keep these investments secret. So the pension fund, I pointed out last June, the pension fund doesn't even know what they're invested in. They're invested in secretive offshore funds, and they don't know what those funds are invested in. So along comes the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and the state attorney general of Ohio says that STRS, the pension fund, should dump all of its Russian investments. Well, as I pointed out in that Forbes article and in my report last June, the pension fund doesn't even know what they own in these funds. They've invested in these blind funds, blind pool funds. They don't know where the money is, they don't know who's managing it, and they don't know what it's invested in. So whether it's invested in Russian oil deals or, Russian stocks, bonds, they really don't know. And so that's why the lack of transparency at public pensions is really become a major issue right at this moment because of the call to dump Russian investments.
I'm gonna deviate for a second because I have an opinion about this, and I would love to hear what you feel about this cancel culture going on. Is it appropriate to see Visa, MasterCard leave Russia? Is it appropriate to see, calls for pensions like Ohio teachers' pension to try to withdraw their funds, their investments in Russian entities? Is that the proper thing to do, proper action? Like, I feel like you go down that road, now you have to do that for every country that does some human rights violation. Now you're setting the precedent where you have to do that for every country. Are we going to do that with China and the Uyghurs? Are we going to do that? You know what I mean? So I'm just curious to know, we're going that direction. I'm just curious to know your opinion about that.
Well, it's an interesting problem. I mean, what about other countries dumping U.S. stocks because of our global misdeeds?
Exactly. It could go both ways. Exactly.
Yeah, it could go both. But the point is, this is the largest call to action I've seen since the days of South Africa, anti-apartheid measures, Sullivan Principle,
which you're very familiar with, right?
Yes. Yeah, very familiar with. So, yeah, you say, well, it's dangerous, whatever. But the truth be known, these calls to dump a country's stocks, whatever, are pretty rare. I mean, where there's this global consensus, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
To my knowledge, I can't think of a situation since South Africa. Maybe you can, but I can't think of one.
No, I'm younger, so I've never even, this is new to me. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. So I didn't know they did that during the apartheid.
Oh yeah, this was a major issue during the waning years of apartheid, where pensions all over the country and all kinds of right-minded investors said, we do not want to be invested in South Africa, and so that played out in the 70s and 80s.
I just feel like with today's economy being even more global and more interconnected, I feel like there are unintended consequences this go around. Could be. It just seems like it would be some higher or greater unintended consequences from doing these types of moves, and I'm just worried about that.
Well, there's a huge difference between now and back then with South Africa, which is this issue. And 40 years ago, pension funds in the United States were fully transparent. They didn't keep secrets. All of these secret offshore accounts have sprung up in the last 15 years. So a big difference is that right now, when you hear state officials saying state pensions should dump their Russian investments, you should be thinking that this is it's very disingenuous to say that today, because today, unlike back in the day, they don't know if they're in Russia or not.
And then if they are, right, because of the ruble crashing so far down, it's at all-time lows against the dollar. Selling now would be selling at the bottom, right? It would further the issue with the pensioners worse, right?
Well, the first thing is you have to ask what percentage of the portfolio is in Russia. And since these funds don't know, the first thing they do always is they lie. They say, well, we're only 3% of the pension is in Russia or whatever.
Right.
Well, and then a few days later they come out with, well, there's a bigger number or whatever. So if it was, the smaller the percentage, you would say the easier it is to stomach the losses. But if the percentages is more like 10% or 15%, then selling at the bottom becomes very problematic. But the first question is you've got to identify what are the Russian assets. And only then, when you fully disclose the Russian, can you make a decision? Can we take action here that's going to have a limited impact, or is it going to have a significant impact?
Right. So with that being said, what's the next steps with your deal with the SRTS? Since you can't, they're stonewalling, you're not able to get any further. What do you do next?
Well, we requested the documents February 19th, 2021. And so it's been over a year now that they've been stonewalling. The article in Forbes, I call it a year of pernicious stonewalling. I like the sound of the word pernicious, but I had to make sure that I was using it in the proper context. It's not one I use very often.
Right. I thought the same thing. I'm like, that's a word I don't hear often.
Pernicious stonewalling. That's a pretty cool phrase, I think. But so the next step is that my lawyers will sue, and we are suing we've taken it to the Ohio Supreme Court. And so, at some point, hopefully this year, we'll get a decision there. But, these funds across the country have really refused to be transparent, refused to comply with state public records laws. They rarely get challenged, because an individual has to go to court, and who's going to do that? Mm-hmm. Just to get records. We're not suing for money. We're suing for, getting the records.
Right.
So it's a difficult process. And most of the time when these state pensions stonewall, they get away with it. Hopefully they won't in our case. But we've got, a well-organized group of highly motivated individuals, teachers in Ohio, who have already seen their benefits cut 3%. So they're angry and they want answers.
So they are still getting some COLA?
No, they're not. They're not getting a COLA. Although there's a proposal now, STRS has come out with a proposal now to pay a one-time COLA. No, they haven't gotten a COLA in I think 5 years.
Okay.
Something like that. So,
I know Rhode Island pensioners haven't gotten one in 10 years. Are you active in that state's pension as well, or not right now? We're focusing solely on Ohio.
No, we're active there too, and the same lawyers I'm using in Ohio to sue for the records we're going to use in Rhode Island, because we're going to sue. Although I've investigated in Rhode Island since 2013, every investigation I've done in Rhode Island, they have stonewalled. So now we have the ability to sue. I haven't sued before in Rhode Island, but we're going to bring a lawsuit there too. And Rhode Island also, the treasurer of Rhode Island, who's now running for Congress, recently said last week that he wants the pension fund to dump its Russian investments as well. Same issue. They refuse to disclose how much they've invested in Russia. They don't know how much they've invested in Russia. So it's kind of a disingenuous PR scheme.
Just politicians taking advantage of the current crisis, right? That's normally what they do. Okay.
Some of it's difficult. If you're in an oil and gas fund, how much of the oil or whatever gas is coming from Russia? How much of the oil in this barrel is coming from Russia versus coming from, in this pipeline or whatever? It can be difficult to, you can do it, but to find out how much of the assets are really related to Russia is not a simple question, and certainly not where you have, oppressive secrecy.
How do you feel about this geopolitical crisis? Do you think it's going to escalate to a World War III with NATO and Russia going at it at that point? Do you think that I don't know how much or how closely you've been following this? The no-fly zone would kind of be that bridge to a potential World War III. What do you feel about this whole conflict over there in Europe?
Well, I guess I'm like I was at the grocery store the other day and buying fish, and the guy behind the counter was saying that at the store was saying that they're pulling all the Russian fish off the
Oh
shelf.
my, come on,
And
guys.
so there's a broad consensus. I mean, people are pissed off in this country for what Putin's
Sure.
doing, and I don't know. I don't know how Putin wins this, but on the other hand, I don't know how Putin loses. I mean, clearly he has a substantial military force that could decimate Ukraine overnight. But I don't understand. From what I'm seeing, I think decades of potential relationship building between Russia and the United States and the Western world has gone down the toilet right now. I
Would
think.
this have happened if we had Orange Man in there?
Well, I personally believe that it was because of Orange Man that this is happening now.
Oh, wait a minute, Ted. No way. Are
Yeah,
you serious?
I think that Putin figured that America is deeply divided,
Mm.
and that this is the time, to do it.
No,
Um,
I agree with you there. Definitely. I
yeah.
definitely agree with you there. I just don't think he would have done it with Donald Trump in office. Maybe after his second term was completed, it still would have happened, maybe. But I try to make sure I just view these types of events from both sides. I try to look at non-Western, media outlets just to get a clearer view. And from what I'm seeing is it's really an escalation that has actually been building over the last 10 years or so. And I guess Putin was mad and fed up with the West trying to really get Ukraine into the NATO group and become a NATO nation. So I don't know. I just feel like it's unnecessary. It just feels weird being at war in 2022. It
Well,
just doesn't.
I don't think there's any question who the aggressor is, and I don't think there's any question of who's inflicting innocent death.
Right.
So, I mean, that's my answer to it is, this was an unprovoked act of aggression that's resulting in
Yeah, I
massive
agree.
loss of life.
Yeah, I agree. It's we'll have to see where this goes. It's definitely affecting the stock market. It's affecting the crypto markets, all risk on assets. So we'll have to see what happens from here. But I also want to just highlight for you guys his latest book. He's gotten the book bug being around Robert Kiyosaki. He's got one called How to Steal a Lot of Money Legally. This one I'm really interested in. I gotta go ahead and download and start reading. But yeah, any last words, Ted?
Well, I would just say both the books are really unique in that they talk about they are studies in stealing. How to steal, and
Mm-hmm.
not how to steal $500 from an ATM, but how to steal and go to jail. But how to steal $1 billion from a pension fund and not go to jail. So this is
Right.
stealing at the highest levels. And if you've been watching, what is it, Inventing Anna on Netflix, or the Elizabeth Holmes stuff. Uh, fraudsters are the study of fraudsters is very current today. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of interest in it, and these two books talk about the dark side of the industry. So I'd encourage people to read them, not because I make maybe $1 per book, but because they offer, both books offer something that you won't read about anywhere else. And
Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you back on. Did you want to leave the audience with any last words?
I think that this call for Russian divestment is going to draw a lot more attention to the fact that state and local pension funds in Detroit, Michigan, and Ohio, all over the country, have abandoned transparency And now we're seeing, when they're called upon to identify Russian assets, the truth is they don't know. And
Yeah.
that should, if you're a participant in one of these pensions, a retiree, you should be very worried that your money is going offshore into secret accounts where you don't know how the money is invested, and the people who are supposed to be watching over your pension don't know how it's being invested either.
One last thing I want to just mention is that I think this crisis, for me, exposes how really a lot of the property that you own, you really don't own. Like these billionaires own all of these properties in the United States. They're being seized. The yachts and stuff, they're being seized. Which, I mean, I'm fine with that if they're part of what Putin is doing from a corrupt standpoint. Okay, I understand that. But it, to me, just really opens my eyes to the fact that you really don't own much. At the end of the day, these governments and states can come in and confiscate a lot, and it kind of plays into what you're trying to help with these pensioners. They don't own the money that they thought the investments they thought they had for retirement. So people just need to do a lot more due diligence and research into what they're investing in. I think that's the takeaway for me in this geopolitical crisis.
If they can, and that's why it's these challenges to transparency. It's important to wage these battles now because it's a timely issue right now. They don't know how their money is being invested. They don't know where it is. They don't know who's managing it. They don't know the fees. They don't know what the regulation. If you ask government workers and retirees, do you think your money should be invested in the Cayman Islands, your retirement savings? Universally, they'll say, no. Why would I want that?
Right.
I want the protection of American banking laws. Well, you're not going to get that in the Caymans. So it's important that they be aware that this money is in secret accounts offshore, and more than ever, you need to find out where your money is.
Yeah, there you have it, guys. In the comments below, leave your comments, questions. I want to have Ted back on maybe in another 6 months or so. Hopefully we'll have an update on what's going on in Ohio. So leave your questions and comments in the section below, and I'll try to bring those up in the next interview. It's your boy Crypto Blood, and that's another Kicking It session. Thanks, Ted Seidel, for coming on. We out of here, people. Holla! If you want to see more videos and interviews like this from influential people in tech, finance, and sports, subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit the bell to be alerted. And go a step further and join the YouTube and membership area for early releases of videos like this. I'm out of here. Holla!